Chosen one stop, not in an hour, not after you finish scrolling, not when your to-do list feels less threatening. Stop right now. Freeze your mind mid-thought. Let the sentence forming in your head dissolve before it reaches the period. This is not a gentle suggestion. This is a divine interruption. Something sacred is stepping into the stream of your racing thoughts and pressing pause. You have been running internally for days, maybe weeks, maybe years, and you have called it responsibility, ambition, survival. But right now, heaven is asking you to halt. Not because you are failing, not because you are behind, but because you are on the verge of hearing something that can only be received in stillness. The exhaustion in your chest is real. The tightness behind your ribs, the low hum of anxiety that never fully powers down, the way your mind replays unfinished conversations at 2:47 a.m. Like a broken projector in a dark theater. You have tried to pray through it. You have tried to motivate yourself through it. You have tried to discipline your way out of it. And when it did not disappear, a subtle accusation began whispering. Maybe my faith is weak. Maybe I am not spiritual enough. Maybe something is wrong with me. Let that accusation collapse right now. Your exhaustion is not evidence of failure. Your racing thoughts are not proof of spiritual deficiency. This is not a character flaw. It is something deeper, something more strategic. You are in what can only be described as frequency warfare. Not a visible battle with dramatic explosions, but a silent war for your internal bandwidth. The battlefield is your nervous system. The weapon is noise. The objective is distraction. When your mind is locked in survival mode, cycling through worry and urgency, you are vibrating at a frequency that makes it nearly impossible to perceive divine instruction. It is like trying to hear a whisper inside a hurricane. The storm is not random. The storm is engineered. The enemy does not need to destroy you if he can simply keep you overstimulated. He does not need to silence God if he can keep your mental radio tuned to static. And yet here is the turning point. God is not standing at a distance watching you drown in busyness. He is interrupting your chaos. This moment is not coincidence. It is not algorithmic chance. It is not a motivational accident. It is a rescue operation disguised as a message. God is not interrupting to shame you. He is not here to list your shortcomings. He is stepping into your mental storm the way a father steps into a crowded room to pull his child out of danger. You are not being corrected. You are being recovered. You are not being judged. You are being recalibrated. That this interruption is strategic. It is precise. It is compassionate. And it comes with a promise. By the end of this transmission, you will not only understand why the war in your head has been so relentless, you will be handed a specific frequency key designed to end it. Not temporarily, not cosmetically, but at the root. There is a shift available to you that does not require 20 years in isolation, endless striving, or superhuman discipline. There is a bridge between your anxious mind and God's clarity, and you are about to learn how to cross it. But you must stay. Do not exit early. Do not skim mentally. Do not treat this like background noise while you multitask. The breakthrough you have been asking for is not hiding in more effort. It is hiding in alignment. And before we seal this with an activation prayer that closes the loop and reopens your spiritual channel, you need to understand what has truly been happening beneath the surface. So breathe. Drop your shoulders. Let your spine straighten, as if a heavy coat just slid off your back. This is the divine interruption. The mental loop is not your destiny. The static is not your identity. You are not weak. You are not broken. You are simply tuned to the wrong frequency. And today, that changes. Stay with me. The shift begins now. The high beta trap. The biology of spiritual static begins exactly where you have been living, not in theory, but in the raw, quiet hours of your own bedroom, when the world is dark and your ceiling becomes a screen for every unfinished fear. You lie down exhausted, your body heavy, your eyes burning, yet your mind refuses to power down. It is as if someone flipped a hidden switch the moment your head touched the pillow. Instead of drifting, you accelerate. Thoughts line up like impatient customers, each demanding attention. Did I say the wrong thing earlier? Why is my progress slower than everyone else's? What if the money runs out? What if I missed God's timing? You check the clock, 3:07 a.m. again. Not once, not occasionally, but repeatedly, as if your nervous system has set an appointment with panic between 3 and 4 every morning. Your heart gives a sudden jolt, your stomach tightens, and you stare into the darkness, trying to reason your way back to peace. You scroll your phone, hoping distraction will anesthetize the anxiety. You rehearse conversations that have not happened. You calculate worst-case scenarios with mathematical precision. Your body is horizontal, but your mind is sprinting uphill. This is not random insomnia. This is a pattern, and patterns always reveal design. The first deception of this pattern is subtle and cruel. It convinces you that the chaos in your mind is proof of something defective in your character. You begin to interpret the noise as personal failure. If I had stronger faith, I would not feel this. If I were more disciplined, I would not spiral like this. If I were more grateful, more organized, more spiritual, I would not wake up in dread. The thoughts feel so intimate, so internal, that you assume ownership of them. You call them my anxiety, my overthinking, my weakness. And because you claim them, you also blame yourself for them. But listen carefully. The volume of a thought does not determine its truth. The persistence of a mental loop does not mean it originated from your identity. You have mistaken a physiological reaction for a spiritual deficiency. What feels like a flaw in your faith is often a spike in your nervous system. What feels like evidence that you are behind is often evidence that your brain is stuck in a stress circuit. This is where the high beta trap must be exposed, because the war you have been fighting is not first moral, it is biological. When you experience chronic stress, constant urgency, endless scrolling, multitasking without pause, your brain shifts into what neuroscientists call a high beta state. Beta waves are not evil, they are necessary. They are the brain's alert mode, the setting designed for focused problem solving and immediate response. But high beta is different. High beta is the frequency of threat detection. It is the soldier in the trench, scanning the horizon. It is the nervous system preparing to outrun a predator. It is adrenaline cortisol vigilance. In short bursts, this state saves lives. In prolonged exposure, it scrambles perception. When your brain is vibrating in sustained high beta, it prioritizes survival over nuance. It looks for danger even in neutral spaces. It magnifies uncertainty into catastrophe. It narrows your focus to immediate threats and suppresses signals that require calm to interpret. This is not a theory, it is circuitry. In high beta, the amygdala, your brain's alarm center, becomes hyperactive. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational judgment and long-term vision, becomes less dominant. You are not thinking clearly because your brain is not optimized for clarity in that state. It is optimized for defense. And here is where spiritual static enters the equation. Divine communication does not shout over panic. It is not transmitted in the frequency of frantic survival. Scripture tells you to be still and know, but when your nervous system is in high beta, stillness feels unsafe. Silence feels threatening. Your body interprets calm as vulnerability. So when you attempt to pray, the volume increases. When you try to focus, your mind scatters. You assume God is silent. In reality, your receiver is jammed. You are trying to tune into a whisper while your internal speakers are blasting alarm sirens. The difference between survival frequency and divine frequency is not about worthiness, it is about wavelength. Survival frequency is narrow, reactive, urgent. It asks, how do I protect myself right now? Divine frequency is expansive, strategic, steady. It asks, what is the long view? What is the instruction beneath the noise? In survival mode, you interpret delay as danger. In divine alignment, you interpret delay as preparation. In high beta, every unanswered email feels like rejection. Every financial fluctuation feels like collapse. Every silence from God feels like abandonment. Your perception shrinks to immediate threat. That is why at 3:17 a.m. problems that seemed manageable at noon become monstrous. The darkness does not create new issues. It amplifies the ones your stress hormones are already rehearsing. And because this pattern repeats, you internalize it. You start to believe that this hypervigilance is just who you are. I am just an overthinker. I am just anxious. I am just wired this way. No. You are adapted to stress. There is a difference. Adaptation is not identity. The high beta trap is insidious because it rewards you initially. It makes you productive. It makes you alert. It makes you responsive. People praise your work ethic. They admire your drive. You meet deadlines. You handle crises. But beneath the surface, your nervous system never powers down. You begin to live in constant readiness, even when no bear is chasing you. Your body does not know the difference between a true emergency and a perceived one triggered by comparison, social media, or internal pressure. Over time, the line between real threat and imagined catastrophe blurs. And when everything feels urgent, nothing feels sacred. This is why high beta blocks spiritual clarity. It crowds out the subtle. It drowns the whisper in static. It convinces you that if you just think harder, plan better, hustle longer, you will break through. But thinking harder in a stress loop is like pressing the accelerator while stuck in mud. You spin, you exhaust, you do not advance. Divine frequency, by contrast, requires receptivity. It operates in a state of coherence, not chaos. In that state, creativity reopens. Insight surfaces gently. Solutions emerge not as frantic calculations, but as clear impressions. When your brain shifts out of survival, the prefrontal cortex re-engages fully, integration increases, and perspective widens. You can finally see beyond the immediate threat. You can discern which fear is real and which is projection. This is not mystical escapism. It is neurobiological alignment meeting spiritual sensitivity. The tragedy is that many chosen ones assume they must fight harder spiritually to compensate for this biological trap. They fast longer, they pray louder, they shame themselves for not feeling peace. But you cannot outpray a dysregulated nervous system. You cannot shame cortisol into submission. The solution is not more effort within the same frequency. The solution is shifting frequency. When you understand that your 3 a.m. panic is a stress response rather than a verdict on your destiny, something changes. Shame loosens. You stop condemning yourself for being human. You recognize that survival mode has overstayed its welcome. And instead of attacking yourself, you begin to recalibrate. Survival frequency says, stay alert, or you will lose everything. Divine frequency says, release tension, and you will see clearly. Survival frequency tightens your chest. Divine frequency opens it. Survival frequency scans for enemies. Divine frequency scans for instruction. Survival frequency is loud, urgent, impatient. Divine frequency is quiet, authoritative, grounded. You were never designed to live permanently in the trench. You were designed to step in and out of alertness, not to build your home there. The high beta trap convinced you that hypervigilance equals responsibility. In truth, hypervigilance without rest equals distortion, and distortion makes even blessings look like burdens. So as you read this, recognize what has truly been happening. You are not spiritually defective. You are neurologically overstimulated. You are not abandoned by God. You are overstayed in survival mode. The panic cycles at 3 and 4 a.m. are not prophecies of failure. They are signals that your system is saturated. The storm in your head is not proof that you lack faith. It is proof that your nervous system needs recalibration. And once you understand that you stop fighting yourself and start shifting gears, the biology of spiritual static can be quieted. The high beta trap can be exited. But first, you must stop calling it your identity. It is a state, not a sentence. And states can change. Rafa. The misunderstood secret of be still begins where frustration usually rises because you have heard the instruction before, and it has almost irritated you. Be still and know that I am God. You have read Psalm 46:10 in quiet devotionals, seen it printed on framed wall art, heard it whispered in sermons. And each time you tried to obey it, something inside you resisted. You attempted to sit still. You attempted to quiet your thoughts. You attempted to force calm into existence. And instead of peace, your mind grew louder. The command felt impossible, almost mocking. If being still is the key, why does stillness feel like a battle? The tension tightened. The guilt increased. You assumed you were failing at something simple. But the misunderstanding was not in your effort. It was in the translation. The English phrase, be still, sounds like a demand for rigid silence, like a statue frozen in place, like a child told to stop moving. But the Hebrew word behind it is rapha. And rapha does not mean freeze. It does not mean clamp down on your thoughts or grit your teeth in spiritual discipline. Rapha means to let go, to slacken, to drop your hands, to release tension. It carries the image of unclenching a fist that has been gripping too tightly for too long. It suggests surrender, not suppression. God was not commanding you to overpower your nervous system. He was inviting you to release what you were holding. This shifts everything, because the problem was never your inability to force silence. The problem was the tension you refused to drop. When you live in high beta, your muscles are subtly engaged, even when you are sitting. Your jaw is tight. Your shoulders are lifted. Your breath is shallow. Your mind is braced. You are gripping invisible weights. And then you read, be still, and try to command your brain into submission without releasing the tension in your body. That is not rapha. Rapha is the moment you decide you no longer have to hold the world together. It is the exhale that comes when you realize you are not the ultimate provider, not the ultimate protector, not the ultimate strategist. God is not demanding forced quiet. He is asking for surrendered tension. When you drop the tension, stillness arrives naturally. You do not manufacture it. You allow it. Think of your mind like a radio. If you tune it between stations, you do not hear clear music. You hear static. The problem is not that music does not exist. The problem is misalignment. You can shout at the radio, twist the volume, shake it in frustration. But until you tune it precisely, you will not receive clarity. Many chosen ones have concluded that God is silent because they cannot hear Him through the static of stress. But what if the issue is not divine absence, but frequency mismatch? You are tuned to survival. He is broadcasting in stillness. You are scanning for threat. He is whispering strategy. The signal has always been present. The receiver has been misaligned. Rapha is the turning of the dial. It is the deliberate release of inner tension so that alignment can occur. And Scripture gives you a living example of this shift in 1 Kings 19 through the story of Elijah. Elijah was not weak. He was not inexperienced. He had just witnessed fire fall from heaven in dramatic victory. And yet immediately afterward, he found himself terrified, running for his life, hiding in a cave. His nervous system was flooded. His courage collapsed into fear. He was exhausted and overwhelmed. In that state, God did not rebuke him for anxiety. God met him. But notice how the meeting unfolded. There was a powerful wind that tore through the mountains. There was an earthquake that shook the ground. There was fire that roared with intensity. These manifestations were dramatic, loud, forceful, and Scripture says the Lord was not in them. Imagine that. The spectacle was not the signal. The noise was not the instruction. After the wind, after the earthquake, after the fire came what the Hebrew text describes as a kol demama daka, a sound of thin silence, a gentle whisper, a delicate stillness. That is where the voice was. Elijah only heard God when the storm passed and the frequency shifted. The pattern is clear. When you are in wind, earthquake, and fire mode internally, you will strain to detect guidance. The dramatic feels powerful, but the whisper carries instruction. Survival frequency expects God to shout through chaos. Divine frequency invites you to quiet the chaos so you can perceive the whisper. This is why many people miss direction. They are looking for thunder while God is speaking in a breath. They are scanning for fireworks while instruction is embedded in calm clarity. The whisper requires receptivity, and receptivity requires Rapha. When you release tension, you create space for subtlety. You are no longer bracing for impact. You are listening. In practical terms, this means that spiritual breakthrough is less about adding more spiritual noise and more about subtracting internal resistance. You do not have to fight your thoughts into silence. You have to let go of the grip underneath them. You do not have to shout louder in prayer. You have to soften your body and surrender the illusion of control. Rapha is trust embodied. It is saying, I do not need to solve this in this exact moment. I can loosen my grip. I can drop my hands. I can allow stillness to descend instead of chasing it. And when you do, something remarkable happens. Your breath deepens. Your heart rate steadies. The amygdala calms. The prefrontal cortex re-engages. Your perception widens. You begin to sense impressions that were drowned out before. A thought arrives not as panic but as clarity. An idea surfaces without strain. A memory connects in a new way. This is not mystical fantasy. It is the natural result of alignment. Elijah did not manufacture the whisper. He positioned himself to hear it. You do not create God's voice. You tune yourself to receive it. The difference between wind and whisper is not volume. It is frequency. Wind and earthquake shake the external environment. Whisper shifts the internal one. And here is the deeper revelation: God often waits for you to release tension before delivering instruction, because instruction given in survival mode will be distorted. If you receive guidance while panicked, you may interpret it through fear. But if you receive guidance in calm alignment, you interpret it through trust. Rapha protects the clarity of what you hear. So when you read, be still and know, understand that knowing comes after letting go. Knowledge is birthed in surrender. Awareness is heightened in release. You have been trying to force knowledge without practicing Rapha. You have been demanding clarity while gripping control. But control is the opposite of surrender, and surrender is the doorway to alignment. The high beta trap taught you to hold tighter. Rapha invites you to loosen. The world trains you to hustle for answers. Scripture trains you to release for revelation. Wind, earthquake, and fire are impressive, but they are not the teacher. The thin whisper is, and that whisper does not compete with noise. It waits for quiet. So as you move forward, stop interpreting divine silence as abandonment. Start asking whether tension is blocking reception. The station has not stopped broadcasting. The dial needs adjusting. Rapha is not passive. It is courageous. It is the decision to unclench in a culture addicted to urgency. It is the refusal to live braced. It is the willingness to believe that God's whisper carries more authority than your anxiety. When you release, you hear. When you hear, you know. And when you know, you move not in panic, but in precision. True instruction does not come in the storm. It comes after the storm settles, and you are willing to stand in the thin, sacred quiet, where the whisper becomes unmistakable. You cannot pray over biology. The gear shift principle brings you face to face with a truth that may challenge everything you were taught about effort and spirituality. Because many chosen ones have been silently exhausting themselves, trying to overpower a nervous system that simply needed recalibration. You have tried to outpray anxiety. You have tried to rebuke intrusive thoughts with louder declarations. You have extended prayer time intensified. Fasting increased spiritual disciplines, believing that if you just pushed harder, peace would break through. Yet the harder you pushed, the more fatigued you became. Not because prayer is ineffective, but because you were attempting to operate in the wrong gear. When your brain is locked in high beta, your body is chemically primed for defense. Cortisol is elevated. Adrenaline is circulating. Your heart rate is subtly accelerated. In that state, telling yourself to relax is like telling a fire alarm to sing lullabies. The system is activated. You cannot shame it into calm. You cannot command it into stillness through willpower alone. And when you try, you often interpret the lack of immediate peace as spiritual failure. But what if the issue was never your faith? What if the issue was your physiology? Forcing prayer while your nervous system is in survival mode is like attempting to whisper across a battlefield while sirens are blaring. The intention is pure. The environment is misaligned. This is where the gear shift principle becomes essential. Imagine sitting in a car with the engine roaring. You press the accelerator harder and harder, expecting movement. The RPM climbs, the sound intensifies, the fuel burns, but the car does not move forward. Why? Because it is stuck in neutral. No amount of acceleration compensates for incorrect gear alignment. That is what happens when you attempt to access divine clarity while your biology is locked in stress mode. You are revving the engine of prayer, but you are not shifting out of survival frequency. The frustration that follows is not spiritual rejection. It is mechanical misalignment. The solution is not more acceleration. The solution is shifting gears. Ancient mystics understood this, though they described it in different language. They retreated into deserts and caves, not because isolation was glamorous, but because they recognized that the nervous system must be trained out of reactivity. They spent years mastering breath silence, stillness, contemplation. They learned how to let the mind settle like sediment in water. Over decades, they developed the ability to shift from agitation into presence. They trained their biology to cooperate with their spirituality. But here is the reality: you do not live in a cave. You live in a digital battlefield. Notifications buzz, emails demand, news cycles provoke. Comparison is constant. Warfare is faster. The pace is relentless. You do not have 20 years to withdraw from society and retrain your nervous system through isolation. The urgency of this era requires accelerated access. And this is not weakness. It is context. God does not expect you to fight modern battles with ancient timelines alone. The gear shift still matters, but the method of shifting must meet the moment you are in. This is where the concept of a divine bridge enters the conversation. A bridge is something that connects two realities that feel separated. On one side, you have ancient wisdom, surrender, silence, breath, stillness, alignment. On the other side, you have modern discovery, neuroscience, brainwave states, nervous system regulation, physiological coherence. For too long, these worlds have been treated as opposites. But they are not enemies. They are complementary revelations of the same design. The same God who inspired Scripture also designed your neural circuitry. The same Spirit who invites you into stillness also structured your brain to respond to specific frequencies. When ancient instruction says, "Be still," modern science observes what happens when the nervous system shifts from high beta into lower frequencies like alpha and theta. In those states, creativity increases, insight strengthens, emotional regulation stabilizes. The prefrontal cortex communicates more effectively with deeper brain structures. The system becomes coherent. This coherence is not mystical fantasy. It is measurable. When you shift into slower brainwave states, your perception changes. You become less reactive and more receptive, less defensive and more discerning. This is the gear shift. You cannot force yourself into that state by sheer determination while cortisol is surging. You must gently guide your biology downward before attempting to access deeper spiritual clarity. That does not diminish prayer, it enhances it. Think of it this way: if your phone battery is at 1% and overheating, you do not yell at it to function better. You plug it in and let it cool. Then you use it effectively. Your nervous system operates similarly. It must be regulated before it can receive clearly. And this is where modern tools can serve ancient truths. Sound frequencies, breath pacing, intentional stillness, practices structured nervous system resets. These are not replacements for faith. They are supports for alignment. They help your biology cooperate with your belief. They create the internal environment where prayer becomes reception instead of struggle. This is the accelerated solution promised. Not a shortcut that bypasses growth, but a bridge that respects your design. You do not need decades in isolation to learn how to shift out of survival mode. You need consistent moments of guided recalibration. 7 minutes of intentional frequency shift can accomplish what hours of frantic striving cannot. When the brain slows, the static clears. When the static clears, insight surfaces naturally. Suddenly, prayer feels different. You are not pushing words into the sky. You are receiving impressions in your spirit. You are not wrestling silence. You are resting inside it. The warfare feels less chaotic because you are no longer fighting in the wrong gear. Modern urgency demands that you learn to shift quickly. That does not mean skipping surrender. It means surrendering strategically. It means recognizing when your body is braced and choosing to guide it into calm before demanding clarity. It means understanding that spiritual maturity includes biological awareness. Ignoring your nervous system does not make you more spiritual. It makes you more fatigued. The gear shift principle honors both your spirit and your structure. It acknowledges that God designed you as an integrated being. Spirit and brain, faith and frequency, prayer and physiology. When they align, breakthrough accelerates. When they conflict, frustration multiplies. So stop trying to accelerate in neutral. Stop condemning yourself for not hearing clearly while your internal alarms are screaming. Shift first. Regulate first. Align first. Then pray. Then listen. Then move. The ancient mystics labored for years to master what you can now access in minutes with the right understanding and tools. This is not dilution of depth. It is the mercy of design meeting the urgency of your era. You are not meant to grind your way into revelation. You are meant to tune into it. And tuning requires a shift, not strain. The bridge is available. The gear can change. The engine does not need to roar to prove movement. Sometimes the most powerful progress begins when you quietly shift into alignment and allow the system to cooperate with the spirit. The genius wave. The frequency key unfolds as the practical answer to everything you have just understood, because insight without application leaves you informed but unchanged. And what you need now is not just awareness of the high beta trap or the revelation of Rafa, but a tangible bridge that shifts your internal state in real time. Imagine a musician preparing an orchestra before a performance. The room is filled with scattered notes, each instrument slightly off pitch, creating a low hum of discord. Then the conductor lifts a tuning fork and strikes it. A single pure tone vibrates through the air. One by one, the instruments adjust. The chaos does not need to be scolded. It simply needs a reference point. The genius wave functions like that tuning fork for your mind. It is not a mystical charm. It is not emotional hype. It is a structured frequency designed to guide your overstimulated nervous system from the jagged rhythm of high beta down into slower, coherent brainwave states such as theta. Brainwave entrainment is the scientific principle behind this process. Your brain naturally synchronizes to external rhythmic stimuli. When exposed to specific sound frequencies through carefully engineered audio patterns, your neural oscillations begin to mirror that rhythm. In high beta, your brain is firing rapidly, scanning for threats, rehearsing problems. When guided gently towards slower oscillations, your system transitions into alpha, and then theta, where different neural networks become dominant. Theta is not sleep, but it is the threshold between wakefulness and deep rest. It is the space where imagination, intuition, creativity, and spiritual receptivity increase. It is the state children enter naturally when absorbed in wonder. It is the state artists and inventors often describe when ideas flow effortlessly. It is the frequency mystics accessed in caves after decades of practice. The difference is that now you can access it intentionally without retreating from your life. NASA research has documented that human brains contain the capacity for these slower states, and that they are associated with heightened problem-solving and creative insight. The potential has always been inside you. Modern life did not remove it. It suppressed it. Constant stimulation, screen exposure, multitasking, artificial lighting, relentless urgency. These factors keep your nervous system hovering in high beta longer than it was designed to endure. You are not broken. You are overstimulated. The genius wave does not add something foreign to you. It reactivates what was dormant. It helps your brain remember its factory settings. When you place headphones on and allow the structured frequencies to wash over you, something subtle begins to shift. You are not forcing yourself into calm. You are allowing your biology to follow a new rhythm. The frantic edge softens. The internal chatter loses intensity. Your breath deepens without you commanding it. Your shoulders lower without effort. The storm does not need to be argued with. It begins to settle because the nervous system no longer receives signals of threat. Theta, as a restorative spiritual state, is powerful because it is the intersection where biology and belief align. In theta, the amygdala quiets. The prefrontal cortex integrates more fluidly with emotional centers. Memory reconsolidation becomes possible. That means old fears can be reinterpreted. Limiting narratives can loosen. You are more open to new perspectives. Spiritually, this creates a receptive posture. You are not straining upward toward heaven. You are opening inward to receive. Prayer shifts from pleading to listening. Clarity emerges not as a shouted command, but as a gentle download. A solution appears without anxiety attached. An idea surfaces without panic. It feels different from the frantic thinking of high beta. It feels grounded. That is the difference between peace manufactured by willpower and peace received through alignment. Modern life has conditioned you to equate productivity with worth. If you are not actively doing, you feel guilty. If you are not solving, you feel irresponsible. That conditioning keeps you in survival mode. The genius wave interrupts that pattern by creating a container where doing is suspended for a brief window. 7 minutes, that is all. Not hours of forced meditation. Not retreating from responsibilities. 7 intentional minutes of listening. During those minutes, you are not trying to fix anything. You are not rehearsing prayer points. You are not strategizing. You are allowing the sound frequency to recalibrate your neural activity. This is the shift from striving to receiving. And here is the paradox. When you stop trying to manufacture peace, peace becomes accessible. When you stop demanding insight, insight surfaces. The 7-minute listening practice is not laziness. It is strategic recalibration. Think about the entrepreneur from earlier who spent 18 hours grinding in high beta with no breakthrough. His mind was too compressed to perceive new angles. But when he shifted into theta consistently, the pivot arrived as a quiet realization. That is the genius wave in action. It does not inject ideas. It clears static so existing wisdom can rise. Peace in this state is not emotional euphoria. It is clarity without tension. It is stillness without suppression. It is the absence of internal bracing. You feel lighter not because your circumstances changed instantly, but because your interpretation of them shifted. That shift changes everything. When the nervous system is regulated, challenges appear manageable rather than catastrophic. Decisions feel guided rather than frantic. Faith feels anchored rather than forced. This is why the genius wave is described as a frequency key. A key does not build the door, it unlocks it. The door to divine clarity was never removed. It was locked behind stress. When you use this tool consistently, you train your brain to access theta more easily, even without headphones. The pathway strengthens. The gear shift becomes smoother. Over time, you notice that you can enter calm more quickly during conflict. You can pause before reacting. You can hear subtle guidance in situations that previously overwhelmed you. The practice compounds. And remember, this is not about replacing prayer with technology. It is about preparing your biology to cooperate with prayer. You still speak, you still listen, but you do so from alignment rather than agitation. The promise here is not mystical escapism. It is integrated clarity. You were designed with the capacity for theta. You were created with the ability to access restorative states that enhance intuition and creativity. The world has simply trained you to ignore them. The genius wave invites you back. 7 minutes, no striving, no performance, just listening. The peace that follows is not something you manufactured through mental gymnastics. It is something you allowed. And when peace is allowed rather than forced, it feels stable. It feels trustworthy. It feels like coming home to a frequency that was always meant to be yours. Fear of silence now brings you into a confrontation that is quieter than warfare, yet more revealing than panic. Because once you understand how to shift your frequency and access stillness, a deeper question emerges beneath the surface. Why do you resist it? Why does a simple invitation to sit quietly for 7 minutes feel strangely uncomfortable, almost threatening? The hidden resistance to stillness is subtle, and it rarely announces itself honestly. Instead, it disguises itself as busyness, urgency, responsibility. You tell yourself you do not have time. You convince yourself that there are more important tasks waiting. You reach for your phone instinctively the moment silence approaches. But beneath those surface behaviors is something far more intimate. Silence is a mirror, and mirrors do not flatter illusions. When the noise stops, when the notifications pause, when the frantic thinking slows, you are left alone with yourself. No performance, no distraction, no applause, just awareness. And awareness can feel raw, because in that space, unresolved grief may surface. Old disappointments may rise. Insecurities you have carefully outrun may whisper your name. The fear is not actually of silence. The fear is of what silence might reveal. Many chosen ones have unknowingly used productivity as anesthesia. The schedule becomes a shield. The deadlines become a distraction. If you are constantly producing, constantly solving, constantly helping others, you do not have to examine the quiet ache beneath your achievements. Busyness numbs. It gives you the illusion of value. It reassures you that as long as you are useful, you are safe. But usefulness is not identity. And when productivity becomes the only measure of worth, stillness feels like exposure. There is often a subconscious narrative running beneath the surface that sounds like this. If I stop moving, I will realize I am not enough. If I stop performing, I will discover something broken inside me. If I am not achieving, who am I that fear does not always speak loudly? It hides behind overcommitment. You say yes to every favor. You volunteer for extra responsibility. You fill your calendar so tightly that there is no room for reflection. On the outside, it looks admirable. On the inside, it may be avoidance. Constant phone checking is another expression of this pattern. Every few minutes you reach for a screen, not because there is urgent information waiting, but because the tiny hit of stimulation interrupts self-awareness. The scroll becomes a buffer between you and your own thoughts. The notifications become white noise that keeps the mirror fogged. This is not weakness, it is conditioning. Modern culture trains you to fear boredom, to equate silence with stagnation. But spiritual alignment often begins in what the world calls boredom. When you stop filling every second with input, your internal world becomes audible. And that is precisely why resistance rises. If silence exposes pain, it also exposes truth. It reveals the difference between who you are and who you pretend to be. It reveals where you are exhausted, where you are lonely, where you are striving for validation. That exposure can feel threatening at first, but it is also the doorway to healing. Because what is hidden cannot be healed. What is constantly avoided cannot be transformed. The fear of silence is not evidence that you are incapable of depth. It is evidence that there is depth waiting to be acknowledged. And here is the paradox. The very discomfort you feel when entering stillness is proof that stillness is necessary. If you sit for 7 minutes and feel restless, itchy, distracted, that is not failure. That is detox. Your nervous system has been conditioned to expect constant stimulation. When you remove it, withdrawal symptoms appear. Thoughts intensify briefly. Impulses to check your phone increase. That reaction is not a sign to quit. It is a sign that you are touching the edge of transformation. Addiction to noise is rarely about sound itself. It is about avoidance of vulnerability. And God is not inviting you into silence to shame you. He is inviting you into silence to heal you. The mirror of stillness may show you wounds, but it also shows you where grace can enter. It may reveal insecurity, but it also reveals identity beyond performance. You are not broken because you feel discomfort in quiet. You are human, and healing begins where honesty is allowed. The subconscious fear of being broken without performance loses power when confronted gently. When you sit in stillness and realize that you still exist, still breathe, still hold worth, even without producing something shifts. You begin to experience value that is not earned. That realization is deeply unsettling to a mind trained in hustle. But it is liberating to a spirit designed for communion. Constant overcommitment may have protected you from self-examination, but it also prevented rest. The addiction to noise may have kept you distracted, but it also kept you depleted. God is calling you not to collapse into inactivity, but to stop running long enough to be restored. Running from pain does not eliminate it. It postpones it. And postponed pain often amplifies under pressure. The chosen one is not defined by perpetual motion. The chosen one is defined by alignment. And alignment requires pauses. When God calls you to be still, He is not threatening your productivity. He is protecting your soul. He knows that clarity emerges when you are not sprinting. He knows that identity solidifies when you are not performing. The fear of silence is understandable, but it is not authoritative. It does not get the final word. Beneath the discomfort is an invitation. Beneath the restlessness is restoration. Beneath the mirror is mercy. You are not being asked to abandon responsibility. You are being invited to release avoidance. The noise was never your salvation. It was a shield, and shields are heavy to carry indefinitely. God is asking you to lay it down, to stop running, to trust that in the quiet you will not disintegrate. You will rediscover yourself, and in rediscovering yourself, you will hear Him more clearly than ever before. The counterattack. The 3 noise traps becomes necessary the moment you decide to shift your frequency, because change does not occur in a vacuum, and the very act of recalibrating your mind will provoke resistance from the patterns that once controlled it. When you move from high beta into stillness, you are not just adjusting brainwaves. You are breaking an agreement with chaos, and chaos rarely exits quietly. The enemy's response to frequency shifting is subtle but predictable. He does not need to drag you back into obvious sin. He only needs to reintroduce noise. He only needs to lure you into urgency. The moment you commit to 7 minutes of stillness, watch what happens. Suddenly your phone lights up. An email marked urgent appears. A message that could have waited now feels critical. A family member calls unexpectedly. A task you ignored for days now screams for attention. This is the first trap, the false emergency. Not every interruption is demonic, but discernment matters. Notice the timing. The distractions often arrive precisely when you attempt to sit quietly. Your nervous system, already conditioned to respond instantly, interprets every ping as a threat. The reflex is automatic. You reach, you react, you abandon the stillness. The trap is not the task itself. The trap is the illusion that everything must be handled immediately. High beta thrives on urgency. If the enemy can convince you that peace can wait, but panic cannot, you will return willingly to the noise. To escape this trap, you must decide in advance that your recalibration time is sacred. Emergencies that are truly life-altering rarely hinge on 7 minutes. Most interruptions can wait. Holding your boundary does not make you irresponsible. It makes you aligned. The second trap is more internal and often more persuasive. It is the guilt voice. You sit in silence and a whisper begins, "You are being lazy. You should be working. Look at your unfinished list. Other people are hustling while you sit here." This voice feels rational. It disguises itself as discipline. but it carries the tone of accusation, not wisdom. The guilt voice is the echo of performance-based identity. It equates worth with output. It equates rest with weakness. It tells you that if you are not producing, you are failing. But remember, guilt that drives you into frantic action is not from the Father. Conviction may guide you into correction, but accusation pushes you into shame. The difference is subtle but crucial. When the guilt voice arises during stillness, do not debate it. Acknowledge it. Recognize it as withdrawal from busyness addiction. Then return to your breath. Return to the frequency. The detox is working precisely because resistance is surfacing. The third trap is physiological and often misunderstood. When you remove chronic stress from your routine, your body can revolt. This is the body revolt trap. For months or years, your system has been bathed in cortisol and adrenaline. Those chemicals became familiar. They created a strange sense of energy. When you shift into calm, your body may feel restless. You may feel fidgety, itchy, impatient. Your thoughts may briefly intensify. You may feel unusually emotional. This is not regression. It is withdrawal. Just as someone detoxing from caffeine or sugar experiences discomfort, when reducing intake, your nervous system reacts when stress hormones decrease. The body has learned to function in survival mode. When survival mode is deactivated, recalibration takes time. Do not misinterpret this discomfort as a sign that stillness is wrong. It is a sign that the old baseline is dissolving. Scripture gives you a powerful pattern here through Jesus in the wilderness. After his baptism, he was led into solitude. He fasted. He entered deep spiritual alignment. And what happened next? The tempter arrived. The first temptation was not dramatic rebellion. It was pressure to do something. Turn stones into bread. Prove yourself. Act. Produce. Perform. The wilderness was a frequency shift. The temptation was a push back into physical urgency. Jesus resisted not by arguing endlessly, but by holding his position. He did not let the pressure to act override the clarity of his alignment. That same principle applies to you. When the false emergencies arise, when the guilt voice whispers, when the body feels unsettled, hold the line. Do not panic. Do not abandon the practice. Detox always feels uncomfortable before it feels freeing. The key during this stage is consistency, not intensity. You do not need to extend your sessions dramatically. You do not need to prove anything. You simply show up daily and allow the recalibration to deepen gradually. Each time you resist the false emergency, you weaken urgency's grip. Each time you silence the guilt voice, you loosen performance identity. Each time you sit through body discomfort without fleeing, you retrain your nervous system. This is spiritual and biological warfare at once. The victory is not loud. It is steady. It is choosing alignment when distraction tempts you. It is choosing peace when panic knocks. It is choosing to trust that 7 sacred minutes will produce more clarity than 7 frantic hours. The counterattack does not mean you are failing. It means you are advancing. Noise only fights back when it senses its dominance is ending. So when resistance rises, smile internally. It confirms the shift is working. Hold the line, stay seated, breathe. Let the detox complete its course. Beyond the discomfort is stability. Beyond the traps is clarity. And beyond clarity is the freedom you were never meant to live without. Now moves from theory into lived reality, because principles become powerful when you see them embodied in someone who stood exactly where you may be standing. David was not a monk in isolation or a mystic in retreat. He was an entrepreneur in crisis. His company was weeks, maybe days from bankruptcy. Payroll loomed like a storm cloud. Clients were hesitating. Revenue had dipped sharply. Investors were restless. Every spreadsheet he opened seemed to scream collapse. In response, he did what high achievers are trained to do. He worked harder. 18 hours a day became normal. He woke up checking emails and fell asleep mid-calculation. His nervous system lived in high beta. His mind never left the battlefield. He strategized constantly, reworked proposals called meetings, adjusted pricing, analyzed competitors. The more he pushed, the more trapped he felt. The grind did not produce clarity. It produced exhaustion. He prayed in between tasks, but those prayers felt rushed, compressed, anxious. He was speaking to God from inside a hurricane, and when no immediate miracle appeared, he interpreted the silence as distance. What he did not realize was that he was revving the engine in neutral. His effort was real. His alignment was not. The turning point did not come from a new investor or an unexpected contract. It came from a decision that felt almost irresponsible at first. Instead of waking up and diving straight into emails, he committed to 7 minutes of complete stillness using the theta frequency shift. No phone, no strategy, no begging God for rescue. Just listening. The first morning felt strange. His body resisted. Thoughts flooded in. His to-do list screamed for attention. He nearly quit after 3 minutes, but he remembered the gear shift principle. He was not trying to solve the crisis in those 7 minutes. He was recalibrating the instrument. So he held the line. Day 2 felt similar. Day 3 felt slightly less chaotic. By day 5, his breathing began to slow more quickly. By day 7, he noticed that his mornings felt less frantic overall. Yet externally, nothing changed. Revenue was still down. Bills still waited. The silence during those sessions felt uneventful. No angelic voices, no dramatic revelations, just stillness. On day 8, doubt intensified. The guilt voice whispered that he was wasting time. He almost reverted to 18-hour sprints, but he chose consistency over panic. 11 days passed. From the outside, it appeared as though the experiment was failing. But internally, something subtle was reorganizing. On the 12th morning, while sitting in that same quiet posture, a thought surfaced. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear. It was a simple pivot in his business model, a restructuring of how his company packaged its services. The idea had likely brushed his mind before, but it had been drowned out by stress. Now it felt steady, logical, elegant. It did not come with adrenaline. It came with calm conviction. He wrote it down immediately after the session ended. That day, instead of reacting to every urgent email, he focused on implementing that single pivot. Within 2 weeks, client engagement began to shift. Within a month, revenue stabilized. Within 3 months, his company did not merely survive. It broke previous revenue records. What 18-hour days of frantic strategizing could not produce 7 minutes of aligned clarity initiated. The lesson is not that stillness magically prints money. The lesson is that clarity unlocks intelligent action. When the nervous system is regulated, perception sharpens. You see opportunities you previously overlooked. You make decisions from coherence rather than desperation. David did not receive a mystical blueprint. He received access to his own unclouded insight. High Bata had narrowed his vision. Theta widened it. The breakthrough was not external first. It was internal, and internal alignment altered external results. Busyness had felt productive, but it was reactive. Clarity felt slower, but it was strategic. This case study reveals a pattern that applies beyond entrepreneurship. Whether you are navigating finances, relationships, creative projects, or spiritual direction, the principle holds: clarity beats busyness. A frantic mind misinterprets signals. A calm mind discerns them. A reactive state multiplies effort. A receptive state multiplies precision. David's story is not about abandoning work. He still worked hard, but he worked from alignment instead of anxiety. His 7-minute shift became non-negotiable. It was no longer optional self-care. It was strategic calibration. He realized that the mind of Christ promised in Scripture is accessed through coherence, not chaos. When he tuned his frequency, first action became effective rather than exhausting. And this is the deeper encouragement for you. Your breakthrough may not require more hours. It may require more alignment. You may not need to push harder. You may need to listen longer. The world rewards visible hustle. Heaven often rewards hidden stillness. When you shift your frequency consistently, downloads emerge naturally. They may come as simple ideas, subtle nudges, reframed perspectives. They may not feel dramatic. but they carry authority because they are born in clarity. David's revenue breakthrough was measurable, but the real victory was the shift in his internal state. He was no longer enslaved to urgency. He became responsive rather than reactive. And once that shift occurs, outcomes begin to follow. The lesson stands firm: the one with the clearest signal wins, not the one with the busiest schedule. Activation ceremony. Breaking the covenant with noise is not symbolic language for inspiration alone. It is a decisive internal shift where understanding becomes alignment and alignment becomes declaration. Up to this point, you have learned about High Bada Rafa, the gear shift, the frequency key, the detox, and the case study of breakthrough. Now you step into participation. This is where theory turns into authority. I want you to visualize something with intention. Close your eyes if you can, or simply imagine inwardly that within your physical body there is an inner posture rising. See your spirit standing up inside you, not weak, not trembling, but upright, steady, alert. You are not shrinking. You are not apologizing. You are standing before the throne of grace with clarity. Your shoulders are not slumped under invisible deadlines. Your spine is not bent by comparison. You are present. You are conscious. You are aligned. This visualization is not fantasy. It is alignment of identity. Because when you shift your frequency consistently, your inner posture changes. You no longer live hunched under urgency. You live standing in authority. And from that internal stance, you make a declaration that ends the era of noise. The era of noise was the season where panic dictated decisions, where busyness replaced belonging, where constant mental static felt normal. But seasons end when covenants are broken. Whether you realized it or not, there was an agreement formed with urgency. An agreement that said, I must always be available. I must always be producing. I must always be responding. I cannot rest. That agreement fed the high beta trap. Today you break it. You do not do so dramatically with emotion alone. You do so deliberately with clarity. You declare internally that chaos no longer has governing rights over your nervous system. Distraction no longer gets priority over divine alignment. Heavy burdens no longer ride on your back without challenge. This is not denial of responsibility. It is rejection of distortion. When you bind chaos, you are not pretending life is calm. You are removing chaos from the throne of your mind. When you bind distraction, you are not eliminating tasks. You are eliminating compulsive reaction. When you bind heavy burdens, you are not abandoning responsibility. You are releasing the belief that you carry it alone. Breaking addiction to stress and busyness requires honesty. Stress can feel energizing. Busyness can feel validating, but both can become idols. They promise significance but deliver depletion. You were not designed to live fueled by adrenaline. You were designed to live guided by alignment. So now you break the addiction not by force but by replacement. You replace frantic urgency with intentional stillness. You replace compulsive checking with conscious pauses. You replace self-generated pressure with surrendered trust. In this activation moment, speak internally with conviction. I break the covenant with noise. I break the addiction to stress. I break the belief that busyness equals worth. I receive the mind of Christ, which is coherent, steady, discerning. Feel what happens when those words settle. Something softens. Something stabilizes. This is not theatrics. It is neurological and spiritual realignment converging. And now comes the prophetic decree, not as superstition, but as expectancy grounded in alignment. Within the next 7 days of consistent frequency shifting, a divine download will surface. It may not come as thunder. It may arrive quietly. It may be a single sentence forming in your mind. It may be a reframed understanding of a long-standing problem. It may be a strategic pivot. It may be a relational clarity. But it will carry weight without anxiety. It will feel calm, yet decisive. The promise of clarity within 7 days is not magic. It is the natural outcome of sustained recalibration. When static clears consistently, signal strengthens. When survival mode decreases, discernment increases. The reason clarity often feels delayed is not because God withholds it. It is because the line has been crowded with noise. As you engage stillness daily, the line clears. Downloads that were pending in the spirit realm begin to transmit cleanly. Expect this not with frantic anticipation, but with quiet confidence. Do not scan every thought suspiciously. Do not force revelation. Simply maintain alignment. When clarity arrives, you will recognize it because it will not carry panic. It will not demand urgency. It will settle into your spirit like a key fitting precisely into a lock. And when that happens, move. Act with calm precision. The activation ceremony is not about dramatic emotion. It is about established posture. From this moment forward, you are no longer reacting from high beta as default. You are practicing alignment as discipline. You are not a slave to noise. You are a steward of frequency. You are not defined by how much you juggle. You are defined by how clearly you perceive. Stand in that. Hold that. Protect that. The era of noise is ending because you have chosen to shift. And as you maintain this posture, clarity will not feel rare. It will feel natural. The final question, are you willing to be still? Now rises before you, not as poetry, but as a decision point. Because everything you have learned converges into one internal choice that cannot be outsourced, cannot be delegated, cannot be postponed. The question is not whether frequency shifting works. The question is whether you will practice it. The question is not whether God speaks. The question is whether you will position yourself to hear. And beneath all the neuroscience, all the metaphors, all the case studies, the voice of the Father asks something simple yet piercing. Will you trust my voice more than your hustle? Hustle has been your coping mechanism. Hustle has been your armor. Hustle has felt safer than silence because hustle gives you the illusion of control. When you are moving, you feel powerful. When you are producing, you feel secure. But control is not the same as clarity. Movement is not the same as direction. You have seen what hustle in high beta produces: exhaustion, repetition, reactive decisions. Now you stand at the edge of a different pattern. Trusting his voice more than your hustle means you believe that alignment precedes acceleration. It means you choose stillness, not because you are weak, but because you are strategic. It means you accept that divine instruction often arrives in quiet frequencies, not frantic ones. So here is the invitation, not performative, not dramatic, but intentional. Say yes internally, not out loud unless you want to. Say it inside your chest. Yes, I will be still. Yes, I will shift my frequency. Yes, I will release the covenant with noise. Let that yes echo through your nervous system. Feel it land. A yes is not emotional hype. It is consent. And consent opens channels. The seal is set when you decide. The channel opens when you align. Nothing mystical needs to descend from the sky. The shift happens because you agreed. You agreed to release tension. You agreed to recalibrate daily. You agreed to trust the whisper more than the whirlwind. That agreement changes identity. You are no longer a slave to noise. You are no longer governed by urgency. You are no longer dragged by every notification. You become a master of frequency. And mastery here does not mean perfection. It means awareness. It means you recognize when you are slipping into high beta and you gently shift. It means you guard your 7 minutes as sacred. It means you do not panic when detox symptoms arise. It means you understand that stillness is not inactivity. It is alignment. The world will still move quickly. Deadlines will still exist. Responsibilities will not disappear. But you will engage them from coherence instead of chaos. That is the identity shift. You move from reactive to responsive, from frantic to focused, from scattered to centered. Before this message ends, there is one final instruction, and it is simple. When the words stop, do not rush to the next task. Do not immediately grab your phone. Do not check notifications. Sit in silence for 10 seconds. Just 10. Let your breath settle. Let your nervous system register the shift. Let the static thin out. Those 10 seconds are not symbolic. They are practice. They are the first act of your new alignment. In that quiet, notice what happens. You may feel calm. You may feel restless. Either way, remain. That remaining is training. Stillness is not passivity. It is salvation from distortion. It is the space where truth rises without competition. It is where instruction forms without interference. It is where identity stabilizes beyond performance. The final question lingers gently. Are you willing to be still enough to be saved from your own noise? If your answer is yes, then your work begins not with striving, but with listening. The channel is open. The frequency is available. Now sit.